Good evening.
How do you do?
I'm well. I'm Dr. Rachnice Candy Tate. I'm with ASALA, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, the Atlanta branch, and I'm here with
Robert Pinnell of Atlanta Metropolitan State College.
And we're here on July 7th, 2015 in Atlanta, Georgia with Charles Gilkey. So, Robert, take it away.
Where and when were you born?
I was born in Gary, Indiana. August 5th, I've learned, 1930.
Who were your parents? What were their occupations?
My dad was a steel worker. He was a farmer by having grown up on the farm in Arkansas. Born in, and I learned this, Monroe, Louisiana, so they must have relocated from Louisiana to Arkansas. But as far as I can remember, Arkansas is the home state. You know.
What about your mother?
I'm sorry.
Your mother?
Now that's a good question. My mother, I can't put the finger on exactly where she was born. However, there is a record showing that, but through the years, I haven't zeroed in on her birthplace as was made known to me with my father. So, as my mother passed when I was about 5 years old, my birth mother passed when I was about 5 years old. I had a stepmother 3, 4, 5 years later. But birth mother information was kind of floating on that, or not at all.
What were their names?
My dad's name was Pierce Gilkey. Without a middle name, just Pierce Gilkey. And my mother was a Hattie Douglas before marrying, a Hattie Douglas. And he was born in 1896. And I remember having heard she was born in 1902.
And was she housewife?
Housewife, strictly housewife, yeah. She raised some 7 children, 5 boys and 2 girls. I was the 6th and number 6 person.
What were the names of your siblings, and did any of them serve in the military?
I'm sorry?
What were the names of your siblings, and did any of them serve in the military?
Oh, my eldest sister was named Leola. She was kind of like the first sergeant in the family. And second came Pierce Jr., named after my father, Pierce Edward Gilkey. And then third became Louis Gilkey. Fourth, Hattie Gilkey, named after my mother. My mother's name was Hattie. And my sister right ahead of me was named Hattie after her. I was the number 6th child, Charles Gilkey, probably named after some uncle or so. I learned I had uncles named Charles. And then number 7 was Douglas Gilkey. Douglas Gilkey named after the Douglas side of the family on my mother's side. He was the baby boy before having lost my mother. And my dad did marry after about 2 or 3 years after my mother passed, so I have a half-sister, Eldora, and a stepbrother, Luther Allen. They were younger under me.
Did any of them serve in the military as well?
I'm sorry?
Did any of them serve in the military?
Did any of them? My dad was in World War I. Okay. And went overseas, France, as I found out, black serviceman, and went to France. And not too much was said about that as I can relate. I have my eldest brother, Pierce Jr., served in World War II. He was part of the early Tuskegee Airmen. He did not train as a pursuit pilot, but he trained at Tuskegee, and he later became a bomber pilot group, within a bomber pilot group. He never did go overseas, and he eventually was transferred out of Tuskegee into up north. It was Nebraska. I think it was Nebraska. Lincoln, Nebraska. Yeah, they had a bomber group getting together, but he never did go overseas.
Did he ever tell you any stories about any of his experiences?
Not very. My dad did not either. Hardly ever talked about the war. Pierce Jr. hardly any, because he was never at home that much to talk about the war as he traveled. And he was also a musician, and he didn't come home a lot because he was already jazz band. But he became injured later on, and that wasn't too good. And he eventually passed out from injuries. He had a crash up in Michigan on one of the airfields, and they said it was an accident. So he was at the servicemen hospital in Indiana, Marion, Indiana, and came home a number of times. Never talked about the war or training or anything like that. You know.
Okay. So I think it's about my time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it was great meeting you, sir.
Okay.
Probably sure it's gonna be the last time, but you know, good luck in the rest of your interview. You know,
Okay,
you're doing
Robert.
great so far.
Thank you. That wasn't too hard.
Yeah, you've been there. It's good. You know, let's start rolling.
Not for me.
And I hope I can live up to to his expectations.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. And the next question is, what were you doing before you entered the service?
Out of high school, I had idea about going to college, working in the United States Steel, labor, whatever jobs I could get. I was also a scoutmaster into my high school days, at grade school into high school, Boy Scout, and eventually junior assistant scoutmaster. And scoutmaster because I got a special permission to be an adult scout, even though I was not an adult scout. And we needed leadership in the black community, in my unit anyway. Not that we didn't have them previously, but at that time we just, for some reason, didn't have trained leadership.
Gotcha.
And so one of my scout executives, I almost call his name, interceded for me and wrote the National Council of Boy Scouts to have me serve as scoutmaster, even though I was not 21 years old. And that worked out just fine because I love the out of doors and I love scouting, especially out in the woods, where roughing it, and certain techniques you learn in how to live in the out of doors.
Mm-hmm.
And this paid off later on in the military by my knowing all these many different little things, and I'm not bragging, how to make it comfortable for yourself in the out of doors, how to live in the roughing, and take care of yourself. At the same time, respect nature, you know. Mm-hmm. So I love that, and as a result of that, I was chosen to go to National Jamboree Boy Scouts of America in Washington, D.C. Didn't pay one penny. I was a leader. And that was in 19, if I'm not mistaken, that was in 1950, a little before I went into service. I was a senior patrol leader, and I was in charge of about 4 different patrols with the National Jamboree from Cambridge Council, Gary, Indiana. Mm-hmm. And we had we had 5 African-American boys in that unit, including myself, and I'm taking rough guess, about 50 other boys who were white. Mm-hmm. And all the African-American boys had leadership roles. I was a senior patrol leader, which was much like a first sergeant. And we had, out of the other 4 boys left, 2 of them, I think, were patrol leaders, and then the remaining 3, or whatever it is, assistant patrol leaders. So I was very proud of that. Not that we flaunted it, we would just recognize it having leadership ability. And we were very, there was no racism exemplified within that unit situation way back then. Because as Boy Scouts, we were respect and live up to Scout Oath Law and Motto. Not that it was not around us, but we did experience that. You know. So I did go to National Jamboree, and first time I went to Washington, D.C. And they ended up going 2 weeks ago to the White House.
So you already been there, huh?
I'm sorry.
No, I say, so you got to go to the White House? So you...
Just last time with our reunion.
Oh, okay.
The Greer, was it Greer and Kirkland reunion.
Yes.
In this year.
Okay.
They're out of Mississippi mainly, and they have sort of like little auxiliary branches up in Chicago and I'm trying to get out of the city. But anyway, yeah.
Now, so Gary, Indiana who was hosting the Boy Scouts. This is where your troop was out of.
Well, yeah, Gary, Indiana was quite a nest for Boy Scouting way back then because of the racial situation. And the Black Scouts, along with the community, pushed that to make life a lot more pleasant for our youth. And along with the baseball, the football, and all the other stuff. But scouting was very, very strong. And I'm thankful for it because it made a difference. We didn't have a lot of gang stuff going on. Not that all the boys were just scouting, but this was one of the opportunities they could get in besides sports. And the community pushed it. The adults pushed it. The families pushed it. And it was very much respected, you know.
Good. So your early days of in the service, which branch of the military did you serve?
I was drafted into the United States Army at Fort Littlewood, Missouri. I spent 16 weeks basic training there. And out of those 16 weeks, you had 8 weeks of basic infantry training and then 8 weeks of combat engineers. You would build and fight if need be, and build projects for the military if they needed, or armies if they needed it. But if you had to fight, you had to fight too. We were trained either way. You know.
So tell us about some of the first days of training.
Well,
you went from Gary straight to...
most rigorous. It was like being in another planet, really. You go from civilian life into the military. There was very little common connection, seemingly. And it was just a line drawn, almost. You went from civilian life into the military, and everything was right now, do it now, and you got to do it. And it challenged the individual to either live up to it or phase out right now. You couldn't play along. You had to do, and if you didn't do, well, they took care of that end of it. So we had to grow up real fast if you weren't ready to become a so-called man or be obedient to orders and so forth. And in a way, it was a good thing. And you had to shape up fast, and you had to learn fast. They gave you so much equipment to use, and it had to be in place. And they didn't take a long time to help you get it in place. You had to apply yourself. And you stood inspection to make sure it was done properly. And if you didn't, well, you suffered. You end up on details and so forth. And in other words, they had a certain time limit for everything to be learned. When it comes to weapons and all that, techniques in fighting, even first aid, map reading, you had to learn it if you didn't know it. And they put you with each other, and the training people, the cadre they call it, were really sharp, and they didn't play.
Okay.
They didn't play.
Was it segregated?
No. And I'm going to mention that too, because it was right at the time that the Armed Forces executive orders from the president, I guess it was, segregation is out anymore. And I think it was under Truman or either Eisenhower, I forget which. But I was a part of that first push into desegregation of the military. Not that some of it been going anyway, but and then the overseas, the units hadn't fully desegregated. I found that I got overseas. But my training here at Fort Leonard Wood was racially integrated. Matter of fact, my first sergeant, who was head of the field first sergeant, he was in charge of all the training in the field, was a black man, African American.
Do you remember his name?
Yeah, I still remember his name, Sergeant Gatewood. After all these years, he had been in combat in Korea, and he knew his stuff. And he came back to Fort Leonard Wood. We were lucky to get him for our first field sergeant. And he was a good man. He never cursed you. He respected you. And when he chewed you out, he always, you knew he didn't like what you were doing. He was a doggone soldier. He wouldn't cuss you out. He wouldn't use that kind of word on you. And we loved him for that. And after duty, he was just a regular guy. The other first field sergeant, not first field sergeant, well, first administrative sergeant for the whole company was African American. And he was well trained, and he was tough. He took care of everything there within that company.
You recall his name?
I can't even think of his name today, but he was rough. And we didn't like him, but we respected him because he told it like it was. I got pretty sick once with flu or something, and I went on sick call that next morning. And I reported a sick call. He said, "You're not going on sick call." I was sweating and sick. He said, "You're not going on sick call." I'm looking like, "Why? I'm sick." He says, "They're not going to do a damn thing for you over there. So you have to be almost dead for them to do it. So you stay in this barracks. You're barracks orderly. I got something for you." We went and got 2 big white pills. He gave them 2 big white pills. He said, "You take care of the barracks." And I did. And make sure everything was shipshape because they inspected every day in the barracks, beds, floors, everything. But I took those pills and that night. I didn't take it during the day. I took it that night. And I sweated. My bed was wet, but I woke up in the morning. But I wasn't sick. It just, so that pill just took that stuff out of me. And then he came back. He says, "How do you feel this morning?" I said, "I feel a lot better, sir." He says, "You got 1 more day, then you go back to training." So that second day, I stayed in there, took care of the barracks. 3rd day, I was out of the field.
Back out there.
That happened, and we were integrated. We had fellow troops in my company from Michigan, from Illinois, some from the Midwest, mostly. They were generally Northerners, very few, even the whites. We didn't have a lot of Southern people in my training company. And, but of course, when I went overseas, I went to an outfit, the 432nd Engineer Construction Battalion, that had originated in the South, and mostly whites. If not all whites, they were all whites. So that when we went overseas, I didn't go from Fort Leonard Wood as representing Fort Leonard Wood. It was just send us wherever they needed you. Whatever the numbers were, you just went. You got orders to go. And they didn't care whether you were from Fort Leonard Wood or wherever the place. I always say, we need so many people here. But when I got over there overseas, the Southern whites saw us, and I think they were kind of shocked because the integration was taking effect. And I can remember now these white troops come out of the field they had work situations, projects. They were doing work projects, actually doing the work over there, building units and roads and whatever the Army needed, and carpentry work, whatever, heavy equipment. And we fell in there that evening. They looked at us like, "What's going on here?" Black boys landed, and they had a whole battalion. And I'm thinking a rough guess at a battalion about 450 some people. They had about 3 blacks there. Can you imagine? 3 or 4 blacks in that whole battalion of 450 some people.
Wow.
And here all of a sudden we're coming in now, 15, 20 at a time, and it just moved out like that. You know.
So how did they react?
They didn't like it from the get-go because I think it was thrust up on them, and they should have known before we got there. And I think they did, but they just took for granted that they were going to be. And then the battalion originated in the South and has been all these years. And when they saw us, like, "Oh, what's going on here?" You know. And some of them did things that showed you this. They didn't become violent. They would ask you certain things and so forth and see how you would react. I can remember on a project we did some carpentry work on where we built some barracks, and this one white fellow, young man like I was, he tickled me, and then again he didn't. He says, what would you do if I take this hammer and hit your nail like that?" He was just testing me to see was I docile or what. So I told him, I said, "Man, if you ever did that, you wouldn't have to do it again." I told him what I'd do to him. And he stood back and looked at me like, "He mean business, you know." Like, I don't know what he was thinking. He asked me simple, "What would you do if I did?" Man, I said, "You better not be here if you don't hurt me."
Right.
But that was just one of them. But generally, others of them were very open and nice guys and went along. But certain pockets of them they were still caught up in that hatred, desegregated idea, you know, that they were better. And why are you here? I'm in the United States Army. I'm a citizen, you know. And after a while, they saw we were good soldiers, like they were. We passed inspection, we marched well, and we were trained well. And after a while, that just kind of fizzled out, you know.
I'm going to back up a little bit. When you departed for basic training, kind of tell me, how did you get there? What was the, do you remember any of those?
Coming from basic training was a good feeling because you knew you were going to leave all that troublesome training. It was rough. And after I left, and I can tell you, coming home on past leave too, and I mentioned this earlier, it was like going into a different world from Army life to civilian.
Mm-hmm.
It's all like a crazy dream. You come from the post and living in that area, food and everything, clothing and everything is military. And then you get in civilian life, you say, "Hey, wow, I didn't realize what a sharpness that was between the two." Not that you couldn't handle it, but you handled it. It was a matter of adapting. You had to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And I can give you an example. I came on one time. In the military, you never put your hands in your pocket. No hands in the pocket. No kind of way. Cold, keep your hands out of your pocket. And that's the reason to always be ready for whatever happens, manually. And I came home. I was walking down the street, and after I got out of the military, and even doing the military, I wouldn't put my hands in my pocket. Nobody told me not to. I couldn't. But I wouldn't do it because mentally, it was so ingrained in your mind.
To not put them in there.
And so this one day I'm going down the block, and I kept thinking about putting my hand in the pocket. And all of a sudden I stopped. I don't have to do that anymore. I just talk to myself. If you want to start talking to myself, if you want to put your hands in your pocket, put your hands in your pocket. That's funny to me. It works for your mentality. So. But a lot of the things I learned was quite helpful outside in civilian life. Not that I didn't know a little something about it, but training that they gave me, building and putting things together, doing it now. Don't wait. It's procrastination. You can't put off. And one of our mottos was do it now. And that today, that is still with me. I don't always do, but that uppermost. Mm-hmm. Do it now. And that's the way the military work. Once they get started, do it now. You know?
Yeah. And I think what I was trying to get to is, because you said from military to then when you went to civilian, to think back from when you were a civilian, then crossing the line, going into military life. What did that feel like? And we don't have draft now, so what did it feel like? What was it being drafted?
Well, when I went in, it was drafting, and I didn't know anything. Of course, like you said later on, was no drafting, but everything was in that mode, drafting. So you just kind of expected it. I left Gary with 2 or 3 bus loads going to Indianapolis, and it was somewhat confusing, and maybe not so many guys coming together for this thing in Korea and Cold War in Germany. It was a big thing, and it was on your mind. You knew it was something that very detrimental. Otherwise, they wouldn't have drafted you. And I looked around. We had some friends from Gary, and we were separated. And surprisingly, they had quotients at that time. So many guys that could choose, maybe the Marines, or in the Army. They had 2 choices, Army or the Marines. And I thought that was rather odd. You going to give us a choice? Well, it's been on quotas. I chose the Army. And some of the guys chose Marines, and they went from Fort Littlewood or Indianapolis. They went from Indianapolis to the West Coast. I went from Indianapolis to Fort Littlewood. And when I saw they went to the Marines, they told me, boy, you made the right choice. Said, I was trying to kill us out there. But anyway, I grew up with them.
So had you heard anything about the Army beforehand, or you just?
I didn't know very much about the Army, other than the CC camps. I know that some of our African American people in my community went to CC camp during the
CC
bad
camp
times.
is.
I'm sorry.
CC camp.
Yeah, CC camp, Civilian Concentration Camp.
Okay.
That was a program put out by the government to help young men get some kind of training and or something to do during the Depression. And they wore uniforms. I don't know if you know anything about that. They wore military uniforms, and they would take them out of their communities. There's just too many people there not doing anything. So the government said, we can get you to build roads, this, that, and go into the forest and do certain things for the country. And they paid them. And they wore military uniform without the weapons and so forth. And they had to train like military without weapons. Conservation mainly, that was their main thing, conservation.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And then, did you receive any specialized training while you were?
Yes, I received specialized training. All the training that you give in basic training is special. Everything.
So you better do it, or else. Huh?
Even from first aid to map reading to knowing how to break your weapon down, put it back together, etc., 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 and how to even throw a hand grenade and what to do about that. So forth. Map reading, you better know how to read a map. And it's not that easy because you got contour lines that worry about heights and lows, And they taught you, before you move, you better know where you're going on the battlefield. Always take the high ground if you can. Because with military planes, that won't matter too much. Take the high ground. Foot soldiers always take the high ground. You know. And it was interesting. I can remember some few things about that. Whatever the Army tell you they're going to do, they're going to do it. If they say they're going to feed you ice cream and some sub-zero weather, you got it. Out of doors. And we ended up throwing the ice cream around for playing fall.
So cold.
But out in the field, and they said they was going to serve ice cream that day. 30 below, 25, whatever, the ice cream came.
Say, what you gonna do with ice cream at 30 below, right?
And being in the field is cold. I do trade in the wintertime. And you better know how to dress. Because there's slight cases of frostbite that happen to my feet underneath here. Not really, really bad enough, but enough. And thank God it didn't get worse, you know.
So how did you adapt to military life? The physical regiment, the barracks, the food and social life? I'm
glad you asked. I fell in there in a different kind of a world, you know, away from home, and everybody was alike. So in a way that was good, you know. We didn't have guys that knew everything when we got there. Everybody just out there suffering. But I used to lie awake at night thinking how to go that fence and get away. The more I thought about it, I said, you don't even know where you are. Out in these Ozark Mountains, you better stay here. You've been here a week, 3 or 4 or 5 more days. Ain't gonna make them. So I just kind of came to the conclusion, you better stay put, because you talk about trying to get out. It was just that weird life and so forth. So I hung with it. And the more you take it on the chin, the more you start getting used to it. And after a while, it wasn't so drastically bad anymore because you had guys doing the same thing. And it was a lot of fun sometimes between the guys, troops. You go to town on the pass together, you play touch football or something like that. And you sit around and talk to each other. And then some of the guys would had talent. They would sing. They would go to town and on pass, and this made a difference too. And then you had the pass to go home on occasion, you know, over the weekend, something like that, you know. So that made it different.
The food?
I think so.
Hmm?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said, what about the food?
I never fussed about the food. Coming from a family of 7 kids, the food was generally pretty good. I thought. They always talked about the potatoes and the beans that you would get. I didn't see one bean all while I saw plenty of potatoes, and I love potatoes. But the food was generally good, and there was enough of it.
Okay.
And when you're out in the field, they always try to give you hot food in cold weather, hot coffee, and sanitation was very good. They didn't deal with the bad habits with your food and dishes, and even your personal clothing had to be clean because they inspected every morning. And you had to be clean, your shoes had to be shined, you had to be shaved, et cetera, et cetera. And your beds had to be made up not when you got ready, but during the time of inspection. And that was good for a lot of guys, you know. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So some good memories.
I'm sorry.
Good memories. Tell me about wartime. So I have on here that you were in Germany.
That's
in
right.
the Cold War, and also you had NATO conflict In Russia? Russian native colors?
Well, yeah, the French, the Canadians, the English, everybody knew how Russia was acting. I don't know, they just wanted to conquer land, Stalin, and just couldn't seem to get along with the Western powers. And militarily, he had been built up because he got a lot of assistance from Lend-Lease from the United States and the Allies, and so that Russia wouldn't fall to the Germans, which they did. Russia retreated hundreds of miles back into Russia because the Germans pushed them back. But the Russia was pretty smart too. They retreated on purpose to bring the German units into Russia for large-scale motor equipment and all that. And then the Russians would attack during the worst part of the winter in white clothing. And the Germans overstretched their supply line. Same thing Napoleon did back in history. Napoleon got caught up in the same thing with the French. He was going to try to conquer Russia, and same thing happened. It was just a modern situation. And Napoleon went in, and the cold weather got him. He was through. And the same way with the Germans. The Russians would back up for hundreds of miles, burn their fields, crops, because their war machine was not as good as the Germans at one time. And except for Lend-Lease by the United States and the Allies, Russia might have been in very, very serious trouble. But when those Russian winters came, the Russians counterattacked with white gill, and the Germans, the supply lines were just too long and they froze. Machinery was freezing. Animals, pack animals.
The winter was no joke. Huh?
Whoa, you know, and whoa. But that was one of the things, and the NATO forces, we were prepared for the Russians if they should ever break loose, because they had already overrun Berlin. And four nations had taken over Berlin, like the United States, France, England, and they had its partitioned into four sections, even though Berlin was surrounded by the Russians. And once the NATO forces made that line across west of Berlin, Stalin got the message, hey, we're going to go start a third world war because these people are ready, you know. And we were. Right.
Right. So then, were you on the front line, or how?
No, I was never a frontline
okay.
soldier. My duties were primarily to the rear, at being a demolition specialist. I knew how to fight because I was trained as a foot soldier and a combat engineer. But my duties as a demolition specialist was to blow up stuff, whatever it was to be blown up. And we were trained and we had equipment for that. In other words, if we were to have been overrun, then myself and others would be the last guys to retreat. And we would blow up anything that the enemy might be able to use. And we knew that. Or if they needed you up front for some demolition, you had to do that. Sometimes they had people who had to disarm mines and stuff like that. I never had to do that, but they call these so-called sappers. They were well trained, and then it was so dangerous, you know. And I got scared to death out of it. And I had nothing to say about it. I went to demolition school after I got out of basic. Most of my guys went over to Korea, and I was wondering why I didn't get orders. And they said, you go to demolition school, care of use of explosives. I said, well, I know I'm going to Korea now. But after I got 5 weeks of demolition training, I was surprised they sent me to Germany, because they had certain mines over there that had to be exploded and detonated that was still in the ground. Then they had to build certain barracks for troops and whatnot, and they had stone just piled deep in the earth that bulldozers couldn't lift out with it. We had to go in and drill holes and then dynamite down it and blow it up so the bulldozers can come and push all that stuff on. So they can build foundations, you know.
Did you witness any casualties?
No, no casualties whatsoever. The Cold War was the Cold War. It could have been a hot war, but the Russians and NATO came to a sort of a standstill after all, the line of defense. And Russia saw, as far as like we can go, we better leave it right there. Otherwise, you're going to start the Third World War. And we saw that, and it's kind of like the Korean, the 38th parallel. Same thing, 38th parallel.
So you were there when so that whole issue of standing your ground.
That's right. That's it.
What about friendships and camaraderies? Did you?
Tremendous, yeah. Troops became sort of like brothers, and they still do. I know we have a lot of segregation yet going on, but units, once you're with a unit, black, white, you kind of come together. And it's nothing you're going to explain, you just do it. And you depend on each other, you live together, eat together, play together, go out on paths together, and you look out for each other. I knew some guys I ran in white and other colors that I remember vaguely, good guys, white guys, African American, Indians, whomever they were, and just beautiful people, you know, once you get to know them. And we treat each other like we belong to each other, you know, and that's the way it should be. I've never had other white troops or black troops who act, because the ones that I know act in a segregated way toward me once we trained together and been together, and we look out for each other, and that's the way it is.
Now, tell me about your family and friends back home. How did you stay in touch, communicate? You speak of your wife. Was your wife before, after military?
Yeah, I was married at the time.
Okay.
I had sisters and brothers at home, younger than I. Well, I had a brother younger than I. My stepbrother and my younger sister. And I would come home on occasion. And they just accepted it after a while. It was just, and I didn't come home a heck of a lot. So we would talk and write letters. My sister right ahead of me, she and I would correspond more so than the younger ones, because she was about a year and a half older than I. And anything that happened, she would write about it. Or if she needed something, it was a change, it was coming. Right. Yeah. So, and my dad, I wouldn't write him a lot because I would come home on a pass, you know. And I'm glad for that reason. You kept things kind of on a nice keel because you could come home on a pass and on a weekend or a few days. And then when I got ready to go overseas, I had 21 days home between going overseas. And so that made a difference too. You know.
And so again, this is 51 to 53?
The year? 1951.
Okay.
You know, 51. And I got out to go into the reserve in 53.
Okay.
Yeah, about 2 years.
And then how was the reserve experience?
I was not on active reserve, so I couldn't. Active reserve, much like the Army, as you might guess, because you're doing the same things. Active reserve, you're really staying in training, and you're moving as a unit. Matter of fact, active reserve can be called up by the president. I think that's the way it goes. So too many of them went to Afghanistan and other places because you're active reserve. Inactive, they won't do that. because the active stay in together. They have their own command. Matter of fact, they're just another part of the active military.
Okay. Gotcha.
You know?
And then when you were off duty, what kind of recreational?
Off duty was nice. You go into town, especially overseas. Over here even. You go to town with guys, and if you got a date or something, you could do that. Or if you want to come home, if you didn't live too far from home. So it was a good way to keep your wits about you somewhat. You can come home, but like I said, the difference, you know, when you first hit somewhere, you get home. Oh my God, you know, I don't know. It's just something about it that struck me that's different between the two. You know, and after a day or two, you kind of get into it. You know.
When you have to go back, on the base, is it an adjustment there too?
That's right. Then you leave the civilian to go back to the base. You know, and after 24 hours, oh well, I'm back. It was that kind of a thing. Coming home, it was nice to get home, and I think it made you appreciate what you had, what you were doing, and it made me, and I think other people appreciate your life, period, because this didn't have to be, you know, because it could be taken away from you right now, either way, you know.
So the next part is about coming home. So you did your 2 years.
Yeah.
And then you came back to inactive duty, but just kind of coming home. What was it? The war ended, or you just had done your
I just
time?
served my time.
Okay.
Each person drafted, citizen soldier, had served 2 years, regardless, unless you had what do they call it, an excuse, or you were involved in something, a civilian type situation, or perhaps if you were going to school and you could get a deferment, something like that.
I think I've heard if you're an only child, like a male only child.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that's true. If you the eldest male, that made a difference. Matter of fact, that happened to me. My oldest brother injured in service, and I'd already lost my second older brother through sickness. And then my third older brother, he passed too. All three of my brothers ahead of me. And my oldest sister stayed alive, and my next sister. That made me the eldest child. So when it came time for me to go overseas, my outfit and trade went to Korea, and I wondered why I didn't go. And nobody ever said anything, told me about it. I was like, Private Ryan or something. I didn't know that it was but they sent me to Germany, like, why? And I didn't worry about it, so why? But I'm pretty sure that must have been the reason. And so I didn't go to Korea, and I think for that main reason, you know, because that was a shooting war. Oh, God. You know, crazy.
Yeah, watch your head. So how did your family receive you when you came home? And
they were
community.
Happy. They were happy. I was through with it, and I think they were very pleased and proud somewhat. I was glad to get out of there. I wanted to continue going to do what young men do, you know. And I had some ideas about going to school and all that kind of stuff, and just being a citizen anymore, you know.
And you talked a little bit about the readjusting. So did you go off to school, or kind of what happened next when you got back home?
I didn't go right away. No, I didn't go right away. I wanted to find certain schools. I'd call myself, I wanted to be a commercial artist and all that kind of stuff. And I'm looking at writing different schools, and I found Illinois University, which gave me a 4-year program to become a commercial artist. Exactly what I liked for 4 years. But the money wasn't there. So we went to GI Billy Causeway back then, but so I just went to work in the steel mill for a while. And went to school part-time at what they got at Gary College at that time, which became a part of Indiana University branch. And it was a 2-year little college at that time. And then they got caught up with Indiana University, making it a 4-year situation. And I had enough credit out of my counsel said, I don't know why you waste your time. You need to go off on the campus. I didn't have money to do that, but eventually that's why I went on to work. That made me some money so I could go to school. And with the GI Bill, that helped. I was able to go with the GI Bill. Made a difference. And I worked out on campus. I worked student employment. You know, you get discounts, books, and everything. And I ate good many steaks even at that. By working.
So you ate well.
I ate good. I want a good steak. I got to reserve some of that money.
So how was it being a student but having had the military experience, where you were
I think,
a little more worldly, or?
The military is not all bad. It's like anything else. It's how you adapt to it. You know the reasons why. It was good in a lot of respects for a lot of guys, and including myself, because you made you a part of something bigger than you knew why. And it was a challenge to you. If the other guys can do it, I can do it, you know. And then there are certain benefits too. The camaraderie, brotherhood, that you wouldn't trade for anything. Even now I go to the VA, the hospitals and whatnot, and the guys, it's just like a big family. Mm-hmm. And we look, you know, we just feel good toward each other, you know. And I like that.
Do you stay in touch with any of the guys, or anyone still around that?
I'm sorry?
Anyone that's around that served with you?
Yeah, because serviceman is a big, what do they call it? It's not a big club, but it's just I'm trying to think of the word that you belong to, you know. Nobody has to say, you just feel it. I belong.
It's like a brotherhood or fraternity.
It's the brother. I think I like that.
Brotherhood.
It's a brotherhood that you know you've served, and you respect each other because you know they've served. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a closeness. You feel it. And that's a good thing.
Now, were there any women serving while you were there?
No women serving. Okay. They had women in serving at that time. Mm-hmm. But they were all women units. Okay. Now, the nurses, well, yeah, they were part of the medical type stuff. Mm-hmm. But I saw in Germany, they had a unit down the road from us. They were all women. Okay. I forget what their duties were. They were the only truck drivers. They did everything for themselves. And when anything needed to be done, the women did it. They changed tires, the trucks and everything. I forget what they call that unit. They were not nurses. Mm-hmm. It was something special, something they were doing over there. Okay. And, but that was unusual. Okay. And the rest of them were probably Army nurses and that kind of stuff. Or they were working in offices and so forth, which might be, but as you well know, they had Women Army Corps and the Navy, the Waves and all that. They had certain special things that they had to do, you know. But now that we've gotten into the days where women are actually pilots and commanders of ships, as you well know, even submarine commanders. Up there. When I see a woman admiral, I'll take my hat off. Oh, they suffered too. The do up there, because you know they still got all that stuff going on about women, this, that. You know. But I always respected the women, the nurses and everything, and even today, I respect them. Right. You got to care about you. They're beautiful. They know how to. They're good leaders. You know, well trained. this lady was a commander of a ship, some destroyer, something, a cruiser, big vessel. She's an admiral and all that. I tell you, honey, you got the brains. You know what to do.
They make it happen.
That's right. Hey, talent, you know, and she deserved every accolade she can get because she suffered. Yeah. And I know that from guys, from certain men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I ask you about the women, kind of what is, I won't say what is talked about a lot today are the don't ask, don't tell, or gays in the military. Did you have to? Did you see how they were treated, or what was the sentiment?
We were not into that like they are today, because society has kind of opened onto that. Way back then, I think we suspected certain guys, not a lot of guys, but again, they were respected.
Okay.
They had certain jobs to do, and the guy said, well, he's kind of, you know, but nobody bothered him, nobody came to care. He had his own special people, and one of the drivers over there, I'll never forget that. He was very feminine way he talked to me. So he was the best big truck driver they had.
Okay.
They had special jobs that guy he could do, and he was very feminine, and nobody cared. Like
so just do your job. Mm-hmm.
No, that's so and so. So what? You know.
Okay.
And respect. That's all you can. I respect you.
Okay. Good. Yeah. So tell us what you've done since the military. So we had you up in Gary, Indiana. Somehow you got to Atlanta, Georgia. So tell us what happened in between.
Why am I down here in Georgia? They made me an offer I couldn't refuse. No. What happened up there was interesting. I worked and retired up there and everything. And
did you retire from the steel mills? Is that because
no, I retired from the community and the mills too, because I worked 2 jobs sometimes. Sent my kids to college, making them money, you know. And then I started making money for myself. I'm gonna tell the truth.
Doing all that work, you might as well make some for yourself.
Yeah, that's right. Save a little for yourself too. But Mom and I, we went to different places. West Indies, Honolulu, where I stayed a week or 2, making money. And I had money when I retired. But as I've aged, the cost of living caught up in paying for old houses and refinancing them, trying to live, you know. It takes something, then you have to live on what you make. And I didn't invest in big time, which is all right anyway. I lived just as well. I had my family, and that made some difference. So I left for Gary because of the house up there was getting worse, and I'm paying taxes on it, and I stopped up there. I said, use my money for me. I'm not putting in things anymore, you know. And we're aging now that I can't worry about having a big old house, you know. Not that I don't enjoy a nice place to live. So my son lived down the street. He, Kai's father, Dad, why don't you just come on down here? Then my daughters, you were retired, you need that. I was working part-time and enjoying it, you know, making money, bowling every week. Yeah. And finally, my health subsided to COPD and other stuff. And so it just made sense to me to just come on down with family, because sometimes I have these breathing attacks that were not too good. And so they kept talking to me, and then I had a daughter up in Indianapolis, like that, come stay with me, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, I'm used to staying by myself. So here I am right here. But anyway, to make a long story short, I enjoy my children and everything, and they're looking out for old pops. And I'm down here, and anyway, I'm glad I relocated, because the weather for one thing, and my children, my daughter, she moved down here, my eldest daughter, she's a registered nurse, she can tell me what. So
make you be a good patient.
Yeah, and Mama, she's a nurse too. They know what's best for me. And so we moved down. We've been here about 1.5 years now.
Okay.
And I enjoy it. And as long as I get my daily bread, The rest take care of itself.
It will. It will.
But I'm here, and I got my own place, and I'm able to take care of that so far. And I enjoy people.
So I have some wrap-up questions.
Okay.
We're getting at the end. How does your wartime experience affect your life? Kind of reflecting on that.
Not that much. It affected me in that I want the world to be more toward brotherhood, and it gets me to see people treating other people the way they do, and they call themselves God's people. All people are God's people, and I realize humans will do this because man is something else. He run, destroy this, that, the other. And I wonder about that, and but there it is. I always learned in my lifetime. I learned to listen to my family and how they treated me and how other people treat you as a family. In the community, everybody raises somebody else's kid. You know, how does the saying go? In the village, the whole world should be like the village, and it's not. Because we got some evil people who want too much, they're greedy, they want to control, and that's so sickening to me. But for those people who want this, they have to stand up to that, because there's a dual kind of a thing in this universe that's going on, you know. And if we allow that to happen to us, then we have to blame ourselves. Even talk about ISIS, to me, I can understand why that should be. Other than there's evil on the earth, and what does God have to do with everything, I suppose, or nothing? I don't know. But we're all brothers and sisters. And for us to hate each other, and something wrong.
Maybe not need to be a global citizen.
Something wrong.
Right.
When you can live so peacefully, not that you're supposed to accept everything about it, but we're different. And we have to respect that. I could always walk away from you, maybe. And then we have people who are controlling and making things bad for other people, and they intend to do that. Why? I don't know. Weird. You know.
So what are some of the life lessons that you've learned from the military service?
The military was a good prop, and I don't want to use the word prop. The military is a strength type, a mental thing. It says you can do this if you will, if you put your mind to it. Just like anything else, you can do it, and you have to have a reason to do it. You don't just do it just to be. The military is there for a purpose, because certain parts of mankind don't believe in brotherhood, or they want something that they feel they ought to have by force or what have you. The military is not all bad, and it's not all good. To me, it's a way to defend you and protect yourself. But when you start using the military to control and to misuse people, then that's a sin, you know. That's wrong. Anything. So military, yes, the military. We should have a military. We should have a strong military, because there's people in the world that don't like us, and they want to get rid of you. And so we have to have that military presence, you know.
So that's the next question was, what are your feelings about war and just military service in general? So
wars is not all bad. Nothing is all bad or all good. You got to have a balance, and with mankind, you got to have a balance, because he's got so much stuff in himself that he caters toward greed, control, and he looks toward things that is not good for him. And I don't think he's found himself yet, because if you find the truth in yourself. You don't need all this stuff, you know. And that's easy for me to sit here and say. That's what is truth, but truth is God, I think. And nobody knows the ultimate of that. So God has given us a mind to create all this stuff, all of it, and then some. And we haven't seen yet how powerful the human mind is with the grace of God. Mm-hmm. But that grace should be toward uplifting, and it should be angelic, you know. So I think President Obama said it the other day, the grace of God works through us. We talk about the grace of God, the grace of God. The grace of God works through us. Mm-hmm. And we have to be ready to accept that and do that and care for our fellow men and women, you know.
So what message would you leave for future generations? This one right here.
My message, I believe, is live and let live. Live and let live. Don't be a fool now, but live and let that, you know, it's easy to say that because it brings about so many things. It's easy to live and let it go. Respect. As you can see right now, we're into gays and other, we're into people with flag stuff going on and with the flag, so forth.
Talking about the Confederate flag issues
and
today.
And my thing is, if you love your brother as yourself, why would you need a flag to disgrace him or yourself? We are the one nation, and we fought a war for it. You just needed one flag. You don't need two flags, because that two flags is separation. We're not together. And we don't need two flags. And I don't care what they say about the old this South and all that. You don't need one flag. And come together and stop this division, you know, racism. We got so much division, and the military brings about togetherness for a one common purpose. Once they know what that purpose is, they come together to achieve that. Mm-hmm. And I think mankind needs to do the same thing. Maybe we don't know what that common purpose, and we do know, but man is not angelic, totally.
So did I touch on everything? Any last words? Comments?
No, I don't think there's such thing as
for tonight, for the last word for tonight.
No such thing as last word, because we'll be through.
Right. That's
no, I just get no getting attention.
None of us want to say our last words, right?
Thank God there are many more words
right,
to come.
Right, definitely.
That last word means you.
Did any of your family or you keep letters that you wrote from that time?
I would very quickly say no.
Okay.
That's been 3,000 years ago.
Who keeps letters these days? I know. I just thought I'd ask.
But I tell you what I did find. I found some stuff, and it had that I wrote when I was in the 4th or 5th grade, and stuff I found in an old scout box somewhere. Mm-hmm. It floored me, but that's another story too. No, I don't have a lot of. No, I don't have anything.
No photos of you in your uniform or.
I got pictures here with uniform and stuff like that, but they're socially somewhere.
Okay,
and,
we'll have to.
That kind of stuff. No, I don't. I know I have a few pictures here somewhere. We've been moving about right. Too, and so I don't.
So you have to help me when he stumbles over them, and you find them. Let me know so I can come and take pictures of the pictures.
Yeah, I saw some pictures here somewhere that I run across. While I was
I'm sure you're quite distinguished now, so I can imagine you in your uniform.
I'm glad you told me that.
I didn't have to tell you that. You knew that already. So,
but it's interesting, and it's been an enjoyable evening.
well, I enjoyed meeting you and hearing of that time. You know, as you say, as a historian, you know, hearing living history is always better than reading it in a book. So,
Thank you.
So
Thank you very
I
much.
thank you for your service. We thank you for your service.
You're
And
quite
thank you
welcome.
for your time this
Quite
evening.
welcome.
Thank you.
40? No. Yeah, 40. 41, 42. But anyway, I was going to that. They had a Gary College that was another part of Indiana University at that time. And they had art classes down there. And Indian folklore longer excited me. I've always been a kid. I used to see my brother's Scout handbook with the old green print in it. And I used to come and look at that book. And it just fascinated me. So there was a little Indian picture in that book about that big. And like I said, I was crazy about Indian folklore and how they lived and out of doors and how they made stuff and got along. And that picture of that picture was an Indian chief about that big. And I really like that picture, which is what that is. That's the likeness of that picture, that little bitty picture. So one day I was taking the art classes down at Old Gary College. And I kept thinking about that picture, doing that picture, doing it. So one evening I came home and something was grabbed and said, you do that now and get it out of the way. You've been thinking about it. I sat down with my canvas and sketched a bigger picture of that little picture. And then I sketched it to that size, and I said, I gotta paint it. And I did all of that in about two or 3 hours. And I got it out of my system. I was through with it. The only thing else I've done to that is frame it. It's been framed 2 or 3 times. And the colors came out right and everything, and I had Rocky Brown's dad to put a frame around it first, and it got old and it wore away and broke apart.
Is that watercolor?
I'm sorry.
Is that watercolor? Or is
Yeah, that's acrylic.
acrylic? Okay.
Acrylic on canvas.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Very nice lighting.
that's the second. But my daughter, Rondell, she's instrumental for getting the newer frame that you can see, the brown color. She had that done for me up in Gary, Maryville.
Okay. Any other artwork that you
Oh,
around the house?
I got more artwork here. I can dig. You ought to see some artwork.
I was about to say, well, before I was doing veterans history, I'm an art historian. So yes, I want to see your I want to see your artwork.
I don't know if you want to see it. I'll go in this room.
Nice. What was it? Let's say first creative drawing from sight.
Mm-hmm.
Have to ask him what year that is.
He can tell you exactly.
Look, it got an A+ on it.
I think when he was at the University of Illinois, he did these back in the day. Well, that was taped.
I got stuff here somewhere, but I got it.
That's taped.
I'll take one more look.
Is there something in there?
Oh,
That was just
nothing in there.
Maybe it was these that was.
Oh, maybe it was.
He said these were.
Oh.
This is students' work. Oh, okay.
I guess he took from that and made that.
You see that guy? I want to do a takeoff on that.
Mm-hmm.
I was given that assignment down in I think that was in Illinois University art, and they take a regular life type picture, real life, and make it exactly like it. Then you go into what they call, it's another name for that, and you go from the geometric to
Abstract.
abstract and the surrealist.
Right,
You know.
right.
You did that in 54?
Yeah, it's been so long, I almost forgot.
He needs to sell that.
Well, get a print made. Keep the original.
Yep. And then he wrote a story that we were pushing him to publish all these years, and he sent it off this year, and so people are very interested in it. It's about a prince. What is it, Namar, Valar? What's the name? The prince.
Story.
The story. The prince and.
Oh, my book that I wrote. It's in this thing.
Oh,
It's just a shadow.
It's right
I
there.
got it. You're good.
It's in that
something else.
the prince, and then that second part of what have you.
Yeah, the prince and something. The wizard and something.
The wizard and the prince. That's what.
Now, when did you write that? That was after your, say, just the artist in there, huh?
Yeah, that was
Creative writer.
I guess that was one of your master's thesis or something.
Oh, let's see. What's this one?
I thought I had something in here, but maybe I don't. No, it's been used already.
What's that?
Now that was down at Illinois University about 3,000 years ago. That's from outer space. That's E.T.'s brother.
Right there with the pyramid.
And I want to
right
make
there
a
fly next
number
to
of
the
them.
pyramid.
I want to print a bunch of those and just put them out there. You know,
That's nice.
he's a tough dude.
Granddad, I'm surprised that you haven't gotten the book published. Did you get some royalties off of that, man?
Right here, I got you. Right here.
You got it?
Here.
But is that the whole book?
So when did you come up with the idea?
Well, it was
62, so.
the student is
62. Mm-hmm.
my instructor. We had to write a children's story. I was in language arts methods, and for a final exam you had to write a children's story. And this is it here. This is it right here. You had to write a children's story, and I did.
Okay.
So
What is it?
Exam.
What's the? Give me the summary. What's it about?
So
The wizard and the prince.
And it's symbolical. It was good and evil, even space exploration, because the prince, the student, they had to go into space to kill this evil wizard, and they had to get there through space, travel through space to do that. That was 45 years before the rocket went to. And
I'm like, yeah, they're talking about Afrofuturism. Your dad was ahead of his time.
But anyway, the instructor gave me a good grade for it, so I didn't worry about it.
And as children, we used to see all this stuff, and we were fascinated. And then you grow, you say, man, you should do something good.
Yeah. Dorrance Publishing.
These are drapery designs.
Mm-hmm.
You may have seen, this is some kind of I forget what they call this, a real life to, not really, these are print card, back in print card I designed. I don't know if it's anything. Yeah, this is one of my favorites too. And
So that was your first. It says your first. You got an A on it.
I want to put a frame around it. That's the Life magazine. I put it on it. It's abstract.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of like a still life.
Yeah, it needs
Of
to
sorts.
be. It needs to be framed. That's what it is. Some kind of frame on it.
Where's that picture you drew of yourself?
This has to do with outer space. Bodies in space: the sun, the moon, Earth. And this is taken from the small to the large.
Mm-hmm. And so when was this drawn? So was America on the moon yet?
Yeah, long been out, but
Okay.
I don't wait till we land.
I
was
hear
out
you.
there.
I
I
hear
was
you.
out there already.
You were there. You were there.
Yeah.
Cirrus A, Cirrus B. Danny, what happened to the one where you drew yourself in the mirror?
Ooh,
That self-portrait.
I wish I knew.
And he was a young man, looked just like you.
I couldn't put my feet
That's
on
one of
that.
your nicest.
I couldn't put my feet on that. Okay, here's one I really like too. It's a mountain
That's nice.
scene.
Uh-huh.
camping. This guy had his tent up in the mountains and up in the so-called Rocky Mountain, if you want to call it Rocky Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
I used to, a few years ago, just a few years ago, I would help with the children recreation program at my church. I was art teacher for them during the summer for about 3 or 4, what was it, about a week or two, about 4 or 5 weeks up there in Gary. It was interesting, something to do.
Was it summertime?
Summertime.
For the, kind of like their,
for the kids, you know.
Like vacation Bible school?
Vacation Bible.
Kind of thing. Yeah, okay.
Well, it was actually a recreation program.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I know he probably shared with you his silver beaver experiences.
Oh, yeah, well, that silver beaver upside that wall.
He got the highest award in scouting.
Oh,
nationally.
Yeah, a local council. You get the Silver Beaver Award for meritorious service.
Okay.
The only award bigger than would be the Silver Buffalo. That's on the national level.
Okay.
That's award the big shots. So
And this is it up here on the wall? Okay.
Yeah, it's that one right there.
Okay, well, I'm going to take a picture of it.
Went to Cimarron, New Mexico National Scout Ranch. And they had,
yeah, I've been there.
in the
National Scout
mountains. They had
Ranch.
to go, what, 30 miles in the mountains?
Yeah, we hiked over 50 miles by foot. And the last 8 miles we rode by horseback. And you do conservation work up there while you're up there.
Now, out of what,
Kinda
about
what?
150, and it was about 30 that finished?
No, well, you're walking before you do that one. 50 miles is 50 miles is the sum total of it all.
But I mean, that was like 150 groups that started.
No, wait a minute. Let me back up on that. It's open for all people in these United States. The local council have to send them, and they give them about 13 days, and they train you once you get the way they want it done. And you go out on the trail, you don't ride anywhere, you walk. And you do conservation work, you take everything on your back. You gotta find you on the way by a map and compass, because there ain't nobody riding nowhere.
Boil your own water and all that.
Boil your own water, Amazon tablets, and shower and do everything else. And up in the mountains.
How many groups started?
Well, that's hard to say because they come from all over the United States.
Okay. How many finished?
I couldn't tell you that because all summer long you got people coming from the 50 states going back and forth, and we were one of the many groups that went. And we see people walk out of there, they couldn't handle it.
Then he went up to Region 7 canoe base in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I went to Region 7.
He had to go over a series of lakes for so many miles and carry the canoes on their back.
Canoes on your back and your food.
I'm going to put you over my knee. You're just holding out on me. You didn't tell me any of this. You didn't tell me any of this while we had you on camera.
And I was a crew leader. I was a crew leader for all that stuff.
Now, you did. Now, all of this is what then got you to D.C.?
All this happened before. That was after the national. That was after the National Jamboree in Washington, Valley Forge.
Okay. So you told me about that, but then
that happened.
He was
that what you seen at the Region 7 canoe base and out west in New Mexico happened. I guess it was about good while after National Jamboree. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That happened in '67. Okay. And I went to the National Jamboree in 1950. You know. So I just stayed a crew leader. And they sent me. I didn't have to pay for anything. I was just a leader. You know?
And so then you're teaching other kids.
And the boys I went with, they were sharp, Eagle Scouts or whatever. I didn't have to cook anything. They did all the cooking, Dutch ovens and everything. They were sharp. Those guys sharp. But they had to have leadership, you know. You got a compass, you got a map, you got to get to where you're going.
And you were teaching them all that?
No, I didn't. They already knew it.
Oh.
But it's just a matter of you got to work together to get it done.
Right.
That was sharp. When I went to out west there to New Mexico, I had about 11 boys, maybe 10 boys, 10 or 11 boys, and 3 of them were Eagle Scouts, 3 or 4 were Eagle Scouts. They knew all of it. But working together as a group, some of them didn't even know each other. And I had to be their leader, and I was chosen by the council out in Illinois.
So you're applying some of the things that you learned in the military.
Well, yeah, not necessarily the military. I already knew a lot of that because I was a scout before I was in the military. And then, yeah, some of it came somewhat. But most of it came out of the Boy Scouts and the Explorer Scouts already.
It was mostly positive, but he had some interesting experiences with racism in those ranks of the Boy Scouts because not many black men were
Matter of
doing
fact,
what he was
the
doing.
guy, we had to take a bus to get the boys to the camp to start. And there was a guy from Chicago who asked to go with my group, his white dad and his son. And they wanted to go because his son was coming out of school and he didn't know he'd get another chance. So they asked my group, could he go with my group? I already had 8 boys. I said, yes, and the guy's name was close to mine. My name was Gilkey, his name was Gilkey, spelled differently. Seemed like the council was trying to do something, I don't know what that was. But anyway, make a long story short, when we got ready to go on the bus to go to camp, starting camp, the guy with the pad and list box, he reached across me so Mr. Gilkey could sign it. And Mr. Gilkey was sitting there, I can't sign that. He said, well, why? He said, this is Mr. Gilkey. He's his crew leader. He was very embarrassed. He reached over this black man, went to the white man, whose name was so close. And I think the council had something to do with that. Gilkey. But anyway, I didn't worry about that. Because I knew where I was coming from. So
Didn't need
things
it.
like that.
Right.
And it was a rough trip. It was rough. And we had fun. Ate good. Oh yeah, up in the mountains. We didn't ride anywhere on
And he's always telling me he doesn't mind
we
eating.
walked.
You think he'd be like this?
But anyway, it's a long story short. That is.
Nice. And so these are some of the kids? Or these are, yeah, I see some other names on there.
Okay.
Artwork. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome.